everyone. Welcome again to the Digital Diplomat. This is Tony Abad, where we are going to be exploring more ideas on how we can get closer in the world through cross-cultural diplomacy and understanding. And one of the important factors that we have been neglecting is a concept known as accent bias. And it's something that is actually turns out to be a very crucial element in trying to develop cross-cultural understanding. And we are fortunate and honored to have with us a person who is at the forefront, evangelizing and advocating and raising awareness on accent bias and discrimination, and how when we address it, it will help us in our quest for global harmony and understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest, Goodie Okechukwu, who is the founder of @Protect Accent. She's also a PhD candidate at the University of Bradford. So Goodie, thank you so much for joining us here at the Digital Diplomat.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me here. It's my pleasure. Like you rightly noted, I'm very passionate about effective communication and all things accent.
Thank you again. Now, Goodie, we usually ask our guests a little bit of background on their journey. Briefly, what was your journey from where you realized that this was your passion, your mission, and up to the point that you've come to us and are with us now?
I think my journey, I would say, looking back now in hindsight, I think it started from Africa, because in Africa, I was raised in a city. So we speak English in a certain way. So within my community, it wasn't an issue. But as I started growing up and going to the university outside of my community, I started noticing the people that we would call the rich people. These people are well-traveled. So because of that, they have acquired maybe American or British accents. So I started noticing that they sound very, very different to the way I sound when I speak English. And I noticed that accent, whether it be American or British, has a different level of respect attached to it compared to my city accent. And then again, my city accent has a different level of respect attached to it compared to somebody, say, that comes from what we Africans call the village, where that is normally associated with poverty, lack, So it was different levels of respect for different accents. Now, but the discrimination was not so obvious, but the attention, of course, you would notice that they pay more attention first to those that have acquired some sort of foreign accent than to those of us that grew up in the city. And on the list of all those that people kind of conclude as this one, they grew up in the village. So it's a different level of attention. Fast forward that to when I arrived in the UK, I noticed two things. First, people were moving very fast. Secondly, people were talking very fast. I could barely understand what they were saying. So in my head, I made a mental note. I said, okay, there's a difference here from the way people speak and the way I speak. Just massive difference, massive gap. And I made a mental note to create more room for understanding, for engagement, whenever I'm engaged in a conversation with anybody in the UK, because I knew that would be required for effective communication, for me to make myself clear, for them to understand me. Now, again, fast forward that to when I was doing my master's degree at the University of Bradford. So I started engaging with national conferences. And what happens is that after some time, there will be like breakout sessions, and people will be grouped into different areas and given topical issues to deliberate on. And I started noticing again that my accent was not carrying equal weight with other accents. And it wasn't verbalized to me. That was my confusion, because it wasn't verbalized to me. It was the body language. It was the rolling of the eyes, something telling me that I don't belong in this space. I couldn't understand what it were, because I speak English fluently to the best of my ability. And in my mind, if you can actually acquire a second, third, fourth language. If you're multilingual, that is a benefit rather than a disbenefit, really, to the speaker and even to the organization. So that left a question in my mind. Could there be anything like accent-induced or accent-focused discrimination? I was mulling over that for quite a while. And what I did was I gathered some of my colleagues and I would talk and talk away. And I said, did you understand everything I said? And they would say, oh, yeah, stop being funny, we understand you. Because again, that was eating away at my confidence as an individual. I couldn't speak freely. If I would pronounce any word, I'd have to have pronounced it at least 3 or 4 times in my mind to make sure when it leaves my mouth, it fits the room. I wanted my accent to fit the room so I can be included, so I can be seen as part of the team and not as the other voice. Now, fortunately, we were in this cross-cultural communication class with Dr. Goodie Okechukwu, who happens to be my supervisor. And I asked her randomly, could there be anything like accent-focused discrimination? She goes, oh, hold it there. I know that I find it difficult to understand some people. Some people find it difficult to understand me, but we have not explored this fully, you know. So that was it for me. I just concluded that I was being petty, I was being overly sensitive, but I decided to do one thing. I decided to engage with the literature. I was so surprised. It was so shocking for me at the research findings that I uncovered. And in that research finding, the one I looked at, statistics have slightly changed now, but the one I looked at as at that point in time, actually 89% of employers admitted to making employment discriminatory decisions based on accents. 55%, over half of the people that took part in a poll actually admit that their accents are holding them back in life. So then it became clear, very clear to me again, why the elocution industry is booming. Because people feel the need to change their accent so as to get on in life, so as to access employment. So even when they have accessed the employment, I've had people coming to me to say, my boss said, I can't progress because of my accent. So career progression becomes an issue again because of your accent. So it's all sorts. I could carry on and carry on, but let's just leave it at this, that yes, this is what led me to thinking. So if this is the case, why is there no awareness on a higher level being raised to address this issue? Why is this quiet? And that was the start of my journey.
I myself have probably taken accents for granted. And you just go travel and communicate with different people. But I've done a little bit of reading on this. I'd like to know from you, why is raising this awareness of a bias or discrimination in accents one of the most important agendas in cross-cultural conflict resolution and diplomacy, which is what we're all about?
I think this is simple, because you only need to look at the role of effective communication in conflict resolution to realize that accent acceptance in conflict resolution is really important. Because I don't think that anyone could arrive at a peaceful resolution without the acceptance of either the negotiator or the mediator's accent, or even the accents of all the parties involved. Because again, there's social hierarchy for accents. Based on your accents, people are judging you whether you are intelligent enough or not. So if the negotiator or the mediator comes with an accent that is off-putting to any of the parties, you would agree with me that already the filters will be up. And whatever that person is saying at that point in time kind of bounces off the wall of that accent, because it raises a lot of conflict again. Yes. Internal conflict, aside from the conflict that maybe they were trying to resolve, and you're trying to come to terms with that while in another conflict situation. So I think that accent acceptance is very, very critical to conflict resolution. Again, look at the current Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And what stands out to me from that now is that most of the times when people come to the table to negotiate peace or peaceful path to resolution, I see the same one race. I hardly see a Chinese there. I hardly see Africans there. I see just the white race on that table negotiating peaceful resolutions. What does that tell you? Again, accent. It evokes a lot of things, aside from your presence, aside from your race. So some accents are more acceptable. The American accent, the European accent, the British accent. I think the diplomatic community need to open up a bit more and look inwards and start including people from various other backgrounds and accept all accents if they really, really want to reach a very peaceful resolution.
So like, for example, I sit at the dispute settlement at the World Trade Organization. When the US delegation comes in front of us, they actually come from all races, an American. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Goodie, we're not asking people to change their accent. What we are trying to do is to make people aware. It's a mindfulness that everyone speaks with a different accent, and we must be accepting of all these accents. And that consciousness is what is going to help us resolve conflicts and bring this world together. Am I right?
Absolutely correct. Tony, I kind of did a bit of research, and I was looking at the levels or the different stages of conflict resolution. And it was very poignant to me that accent acceptance is missing in that level or process of conflict resolution. I think the first level, my opinion, should be acceptance of accent. Once you accept the way somebody sounds, invariably you accept the whole of them. Honestly, it just opens that door that you now start seeing them as someone that is capable enough, intelligent enough to mediate or to negotiate a peaceful path to conflict. Like you said, we are not saying change your accent. No, what we are saying, what Protect Accent is saying, is that the level, the burden of interlocution should not rest squarely on the speaker. It should be 50-50, bringing the goodwill, acceptance from both the speaker and the listener. So the bottom line is accept everyone's accent and realize that you share a level of responsibility, interlocution, and that includes accepting individuals' accents.
In the course of your advocacy, could you give us an anecdote or a short, maybe a short story or example of how you were able to eliminate the accent bias and then thereby achieve something meaningful, like resolving a conflict, for example?
Yeah, what I'll tell you, Tony, is how far we have come with raising the level of awareness and acceptance. So we created the Accent Charter, and organizations are signing up to it. They are more mindful. And I think to some level, people's accents are now being accepted at different levels and even forms of organizational communication. What I can tell you again, unfortunately, is that the dial has not moved that much. So there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of accent acceptance in organizational communication, even conflict resolution, whatever level of communication really. Acceptance, quality of attention, that is what I think basically will move the dial even further. Now, I know there needs to be strategies around that, but acceptance and quality of attention is key, first and foremost.
Before we go, I wanted to ask, is there a practical tip you could give our audience? We're all here wanting to achieve a skill in being able to cross borders, meaning we want to be able to communicate, we want to negotiate, we want to resolve conflicts, or even just want to sell products or services. What would be maybe the one tip you could give us that keeps us aware and keeps us conscious that we should eliminate our accent bias?
I think for me, it's inward reflection, looking at your own unconscious bias, really, before you start doing anything, bringing that to the fore and dealing with it. And like you rightly mentioned earlier on, mindfulness, emotional intelligence,
Mm.
being open to various conversations with multiple accents. But it all starts with looking inwards, reflecting at yourself, thinking about what unconscious biases you may possess that has not come to the fore yet. Now, I am not an advocate for unconscious bias. I genuinely don't believe in that term. But for people who do, and for people who think that really there can be some things that you don't like, you don't agree with, but you are not conscious of until an event brings it to the fore. Wow, why not do like a pre-check of your unconscious biases and try to look at better ways that you can communicate and open up to various conversations.
That's a good idea. Pre-check. So pre-check your
Pre-check.
accent bias.
Yeah.
So that so that you enter the room being mindful.
Be mindful, fully prepared.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Goodie, for sharing this with us. This is something that's also opened my own eyes. I've been teaching myself to be mindful about bias and prejudice, even when I'm talking to people here back home, centering around accent. What we hear, I think is a good place to start, and it's a good place to pre-check your biases and your prejudices, so that when you enter the room of negotiation or conflict resolution, we're able to do it with that impartiality and cold neutrality that we should bring with us, and maybe understanding and appreciation actually of the other culture. Goodie, thank you so much again for being with us, and I hope you can join us again. Love to continue this conversation on accents and accent bias, and how we can make this a better world to live in.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, Tony. Thank you very much.
This has been the Digital Diplomat. This is Tony Abad, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you again at our next episode.